Hey folks, Randy Wilburn here from I Am Northwest Arkansas. This is just a quick disclaimer for today's episode. I sat down with Dr. Bri Biehl-Jackson, a chiropractor here locally in Northwest Arkansas. And I just wanted to say that anything that we talked about today is for informational purposes only and educational purposes and, more importantly, entertainment purposes. Nothing that is shared in this episode today is to be construed as medical advice or guidance. This is purely for informational purposes only. If you have a doctor or you need to see a doctor, please see one and don't rely on what you read on the internet or what you hear on a podcast to be your guidance. If anything, gain information, gain understanding, but also see an expert when all else is said and done. So I hope this is disclaimer enough to tell you that this is a special episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. We will be talking about chiropractic practices on this episode, but we are not rendering any advice. It's a lot of storytelling and a lot of good information purely for entertainment purposes. I hope you enjoy it. Cue the music.
It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. I am your host, Randy Wilburn. I'm excited to be with you as I always am. I'm sitting here in the Furman Garner Performance Studio right here at KUAF, and I'm so excited to be able to record another episode of the podcast here. I certainly appreciate the sponsorship, and more importantly, it's really a partnership that I have with KUAF and the only NPR station here in Northwest Arkansas, 91.3. Got to check them out. And if you didn't know, my podcast airs on Ozarks at Large every Tuesday, sometime between, 12 and also at 7 o'clock, because the show comes on twice a day, Monday through Friday. And if you don't catch that, you can also catch the podcast for Ozarks at Large. So I really want to encourage you to tune in to what KUAF is doing. I mean, we have to support public radio just like we have to support public television. It's important. And so my commercial is over as far as that's concerned. But I do want for you, the listener, to understand the importance of having open channels of communication where ideas can be exchanged. And that's kind of what we do here at the podcast, right? Every week we bring on somebody new to introduce you to make you aware of, to tell a story, to enlighten you about something amazing that's happening here in Northwest Arkansas or something that somebody from Northwest Arkansas is doing around the world. And so today we're going to enlighten you with somebody that's here in Northwest Arkansas making a difference in our community. And that individual is Dr. Bri Biehl-Jackson. And she is a chiropractor and she has her own chiropractic company and it's called Essence Chiropractic. She's also a doula, which I just realized right before we started recording this. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not know this? But that's kind of cool. And maybe we'll have her talk a little bit about that. But the long and short of it is Dr. Biehl-Jackson, I welcome you to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast.
Thank you. This is so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good to have you here. We connected, I think, at the Black Expo, and I can't remember which one because they all kind of blend together.
The February one.
It was the February one. That's when we officially connected, and I kind of knew of you, but we had never physically met in person. And we were like,
hey,
Instagram I know you.
Friends.
Right, Instagram friends. So it was exciting to connect with you and to just have a conversation and see what you were doing. And then I got a chance to come by your office, which is uptown, north side of Fayetteville, right up above Joyce there. And I got a chance to be a part of your grand opening, which I was excited about. And I'm just happy to have you here in the studio with me to talk a little bit about what you're doing and why you came back to Northwest Arkansas to put a flag in the ground, if you will. And so why don't you give our audience your superhero origin story, as we talked about, and just share with them a little bit about who Dr. Bri is.
Okay, well, I guess starting from the top, I was born, actually, fun fact, most people don't know this, but both my parents were in the Army.
Okay.
I was born on Long Island, where my mom's whole family lives. So they did that little Long Island, whatever, for some time. And then both my parents were like, Army, hey. So we moved to Italy. We lived there for a couple years, came back to the States, jumped around Army bases and whatnot. Then I think it was like 2000, was when my dad got out of the Army. And for some reason, he was like, hey, family, we're moving to Edmond, Oklahoma.
Wow.
And we're like, what? Like, literally, tumbleweeds were there. Like, when there was no, like, by the way, Edmond is like a suburb of Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. So there was no OKC Thunder at that time. There was really not a lot kicking. I'm like, why? What? Like, our whole family was like, okay, like, we're going to just trust the process.
Wait,
like,
what university? Isn't Oklahoma State there?
No, that's in Stillwater.
Stillwater, right. So wait, remind me of where Oklahoma is.
So Oklahoma is just, where are we? West of Arkansas. Like, to get to my hometown.
No. Oh, the University of Oklahoma. I'm sorry. OU.
OU.
OU
is in Norman.
Is in Norman. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And Norman is maybe like 45. Yeah. 40-ish, 45 minutes from like where I grew up.
Okay. Well, I've heard of Edmond, and what is Edmond's claim to fame?
Well, funny you should ask. Edmond is the home of the University of Central Oklahoma, UCO.
Okay.
And actually, fun fact, they have one of the best forensics programs like in the country.
Oh,
yeah. My sister goes there and she's in that program. So
interesting. Shout out to them.
Yeah, we kind of do excellent stuff in our family. But anyway, I grew up in Edmond. That was fine, I guess. And then I came to the U of A for undergrad. And that was cool. I got my bachelor's in psychology, actually. Yeah, double minored in biology and Spanish. So that was fun for really LOLs. I don't really know why I did any of that stuff. But the original plan was to go to med school. Okay. Pre-med, that was the track of my life. I've known like since I was a kid, like a really small kid, that I wanted to be a doctor. So I was like, okay, like obviously, you have to like go to undergrad first and blah, 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 blah. So I was like, okay, neat, fine. Then when I turned 19, I injured my back doing something not even cool. I was getting my backpack out of the back seat of my car, and it was very heavy, being in honors and all that stuff. I had a heavy backpack. Lifted it improperly, and I just felt like this instant pain like shoot down my entire back, literally down to my foot. Did not know at the time that was classic sciatica. Didn't know. But anyway, I was like, oh, I'm 19. Like, it'll go away. This is fine. Yeah. It did not go away. Nope, didn't. Did not go away. It was not fine. So that was neat and fun. I had to go to like all these appointments. I went to like a primary care doctor. I did this and that. And they were like, hey, we're going to refer you to an orthopedist because we want you to have spinal surgery at age 19. So I was like,
all from an overweight backpack?
Mm-hmm. And I was like, because they basically were trying to tell me that I had like a herniated disc and like the fluid was like going to leak into my body and I was going to become paralyzed and stuff. And I was like, okay. So I go to this appointment. I'm 19 and they're like, yeah, so we want to take the disc out and like fuse your bones together. And I was like,
none of that sounded right.
It was not like really the move for me. I was like, I don't think I want to do that. Like, I'm 19. I want to like, frolic around with my friends and like, like undergrad fun. That did not sound like fun. So I was like, no. So I was like, you know what? I'll just not do that. And they're like, okay, well, you can go to PT, I guess. And so I was like, okay. So I did PT for 8 weeks. No progress, no change, nothing got better. And they were like, well, I guess you can just go to pain management. I didn't know what that was. I show up to pain management and they're like, here's a bunch of opioids and steroid injections and this and that. Also found that I was allergic to steroid injections that day. And they're like, oh, looks like we have to just wait for it to pass. There's nothing we can do. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, that was great. Super fun. I loved doing that. Anyway, and then I was just like, I guess I'm just going to like hobble around, I guess. Like, I don't know. It was starting to like affect the way I walked and all this. It was really getting bad. By that point, it's like Christmas break. So I was like, okay, going home for Christmas break, as college kids do. My best friend from high school, his dad is a chiropractor. Okay. And I was over at their house, like just hanging out. And he was like, have you ever like been to a chiropractor? Like, I feel like that's something that would help you. And I was like, no, like, what is that? I'm not I mean, I knew he was a chiropractor, but I was like, whatever, like, that seems like not for me. I don't know what that is, but it's not for me. And then he was like, just come by the office one day. Just come see. And I was like, all right, man. So I go to his office, do the whole exam, blah, blah, blah.
Well, wait. So were you in pain all this time? So it was like on a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, I was like fighting for my life. It was over a 7 or 8, like every day.
Really?
Sharp pain.
Okay.
Like, also I had an upstairs apartment at the time. So like getting up and down the stairs was crazy. And like I had a dog and trying to like walk him and this. And it was crazy.
Oh, man.
It was really bad. And like my, now husband, then boyfriend was like, maybe you should just go ahead and like have the surgery. Like, I don't know.
It was that serious.
It was
then.
pretty bad. And I was like there were some days where I like couldn't go to class. Like I couldn't even like get out of bed. It was bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you've heard those stories before. I mean, people talk about how their life is fundamentally changed because of a back issue.
Oh yeah. It was paused. And I was like, oh, like it's fine. Like, you know, like I was a teenager. I was like, this is fine. Whatever.
So you're in his office.
Yeah. I'm in his office. He's like, okay, just lay down and I'll just like, whatever. I do all the exam and stuff, whatever. And then he adjusted me. I am not even kidding. I stood up and that was the first time I was pain free in like 8 months.
Really?
Yeah. Like
from one adjustment.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, ain't no way. This man just did this random stuff to me and I am better. Like what? I literally went home as with my mom. I told her I was going to the appointment. I walked in the door and she was like, so how'd it go? And I was like, look at me walking around. I'm like, fine. I'm good. I was like, like hitting little
bending
moves.
over.
Literally, I was like,
touching your toes.
I was like, look, watch me tie
stuff.
my shoe really quick. Like,
oh my
ooh.
goodness.
And she was like, okay. Like, still skeptical. You know how moms are. They're like, okay, whatever. So literally from that moment, I was like, chiropractic, interesting. And I literally went back to school that following semester, changed my major back to premed, which I had dropped at that point.
Sure.
Because I was like, what's the point? The medical system is terrible. Like, I'm never going to get better. Blah. Anyway, so I like threw that stuff back on. I applied for chiropractic school like my junior year of undergrad. I went there. I was in Kansas City, Cleveland University, and I went there. Graduated from there was that last year? I think. Yeah, last
I think so.
April.
I remember seeing pictures for your graduation. So
life is a movie. I don't know. But anyway, it was last April. Yeah, April 22nd. I graduated from there. And then I was like, well, my plan is to move back to Fayetteville. So yeah, came back here. Mind you, now, fast forward, I am now married to said person from earlier.
Sure.
My husband, we're married now. And we're like, where do we want to live? I don't know, whatever. My family lives in Oklahoma. His family's from El Dorado, Arkansas, which is like South Arkansas.
Yeah, I know where El Dorado is.
And so this is kind of like a good like halfway, I guess, like between my family and his family. So we're like, this is cool. We liked Fayetteville. Like, why not? You know? Also, I didn't really have like great chiropractic options when I was living here.
Sure.
Especially, you know, trying to find one, a female doctor, and two, like a provider of color was not an option. Like aside from Dr. Ashley in Bentonville, shout out to her. And with this chiropractic, she was like the only Black chiropractor here for a long time. And the only reason why I know about her is
because of the Black Expo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I met her there too, actually.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. A long time. She was the only one. And then the only other like Black chiropractor that I even know is in Little Rock.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah, Dr. Rodney Williams, he's been in practice for like probably 30 years now. And I know him through like some like chiropractic organization stuff. But anyway, so I was like, yeah, I guess we're going to live here and I'm going to open my office. And it's going to be in Fayetteville. And I was very adamant on being in Fayetteville. My realtor was like, well, what about like Springdale or what about that? No, ma'am.
It's Fayetteville.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
I need to be in Fayetteville. So I looked for literally a year and I found my office space in March, signed the lease to start in April.
Yeah.
And then my office was open in May.
Yeah.
And here we are now.
Yeah. Couple months later and you're going strong.
Yeah, just rocking and rolling.
That's awesome. So, man, there's actually a lot to unpack here. And I certainly want to make sure that we give you enough time to kind of share about this. Because I think a couple of things that you've already said that come to mind that I think anybody listening to this needs to be aware of. First of all, and I'm just going to go right back to the beginning and how you injured yourself in the first place. Most kids these days carry a backpack that has too much in them.
Oh my gosh.
Is that an understatement?
Yes. Like,
okay.
Even like starting
It's a real issue.
With little kids. And it all really starts with like one, wearing a backpack where the straps are too loose.
Yep.
You know, it's like the cute like fashion thing or whatever to have like a saggy backpack. Don't get it. Whatever. Yeah. Terrible for your back. So bad. But yeah, you shouldn't be carrying more than like probably 10 or 15% of your body weight. So if you're a small, frail child, that means like a book.
Right.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't be having textbooks and a binder and a trapper keeper and a lunchbox and whatever else and like rocks and like whatever kids carry around in their backpacks. It's just too much. A lot of chiropractors I know, they'll do like kind of like how firefighters do the thing where they like make sure your car seat is in the car properly. Like they'll have the kids come to the office and make sure their backpack is like fitting properly and like, okay, like if you want to have extra stuff, like carry it in your arms, like maybe like don't do that because you'll put a lot of strain on your back and like really, really hurt yourself at a young age, which learn from me. It's not fun.
And I think the mistake that's usually made with kids is that adults aren't able to determine exactly what's wrong. Like a kid will say, oh, my back's, something's hurting. And you just think, oh, this is a kid. Walk it off.
Like, walk it off, you're fine.
Yeah, you're fine. But the reality is that they can injure their backs just as easily as an adult can.
Oh, yeah. And there's the little bodies, they're still developing. So we got to be extra careful, especially with kids. And they bump around and do crazy things anyways. Like, kids have no like sense of safety sometimes. So they're just like, oh, I can jump off this and I'll be fine.
Right.
Woo. So like why add another layer of risk by just something preventable, like having a backpack that's not too heavy.
Sure. Well, and every time I see you, you have a smile on your face. And I would think that with the work that you're doing, it's the kind of thing where you're constantly presented with challenges because I know a lot of your patients come through and back pain is a real issue, right? I mean, there are people that don't get off their couch because of the back pain or don't get out of their bed because of their back pain. I remember my dad talking about sciatica and how much it used to bother him. And, he would get, he didn't take any medication for it. He would kind of, because he was a guy and he wanted to tough it out, but he was constantly in pain. And if you don't have somebody that's able to help you kind of diagnose what's wrong, then, it's a challenge. I'm curious to know, were you ever able to determine what exactly had happened to your back that this chiropractor was able to fundamentally change it in one meeting?
Yeah. So basically what ended up happening was I had classic presentation of sciatica, which means your sciatic nerve, which exits like from your lower back and it goes down basically from kind of like the small of your back area all the way down to literally the bottom of your foot. And it's a one long nerve. And there's a lot of ways in which that can be irritated. It can be due to nerve compression. It can be to your vertebrae shifting around, and then it closes up the foramen / exit of where the nerves come out, which, it's much like if you like take a hose and kind of like fold it in half and like the pressure builds up. It's the same thing. Yeah. And so that's basically what happened. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. So my body started overcompensating for that pain. So I started like changing the way I walked, which then caused hip problems, which then caused a knee problem, which then started causing like a plantar fasciitis, like bottom of the foot sort of pain problem. So it just kind of leads to this whole domino effect of issues that I didn't really know were even crazy. Like I couldn't even get through a 45-minute lecture without like overwhelming low back pain to where I was like, I have to like find a reason to, like pretend to fill my water bottle or like I had to take a pretend phone call to get up and like walk around or something because it was just too crazy. But statistically, 40% of people will experience low back pain in their life. And I think of that 40%, most people will just start taking a medication for it, whether the medication is just like an ibuprofen, like an anti-inflammatory or something, or some people will get prescribed straight away an opioid, which is like all bad, highly addictive.
I just watch Painkillers on Netflix, and that just, I've never been, I'm always like, I'll just endure the pain. Right. But after watching that, I like never want to let one of those pills ever pass my lips. So. Yeah,
they prescribed that to me at Pain Management, by the way. And they were like, you need to take this. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And they were like, but you should. And I was like,
I don't think so.
I'm straight on that. Like, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And to the point to where, like, when you go to Pain Management, by the way, they make you do like drug testing every month. So whatever, I guess that's like part of their thing. And for several months, like the stuff was not coming up in my system as I told them it would not. And they literally were like, hey, we need you to bring all the pills we've ever prescribed you or the scripts, or we're going to call the police because we think you're selling them.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, are you being for real?
Yeah, they were being for real.
I was like, are you punking me right now?
No.
I was like, I literally told you that I'm not going to take these. And I said it every single month for several months that I have no intention of taking these.
So you never even filled the prescription?
I think I filled one.
Okay.
I filled one, and then I got them and I was like, I was like, no, I'm good. And I was like, this doctor, by the way, was like 1,000 years old. So he was actually doing like paper scripts. So I was like, I'm 19 years old. I don't know where these little sheets of paper are.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Typically, they just call your pharmacist now and just do it over the phone.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, this is like so ghetto and like old school. Like, what are we doing? And I was like, okay, man. I was like, call the police, I guess, because I don't know what to tell you.
That's funny. That's
like,
funny.
well, we're going to have to remove you as a patient. And I was like, do it.
By that time, you were healed, though, anyway. So,
by then, I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care. But anyway, a bunch of people experience sciatica or any sort of low back pain throughout their life. Most people, it does happen to them when they get older. So it's kind of crazy that happened to me so young. But also, they told me I'm hypermobile. So they're like, something's probably going to happen to you anyway. And I was like, great.
What does hypermobile mean?
So that just means that all of my joints move further than they should. It was cool when I was a dancer.
Is that a good or bad thing?
It's like a neutral thing. It's just like a trait some people have. Also women.
It doesn't mean you're more flexible.
I mean, to a degree, but it's like my joints have a further range of motion than regular people. So like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, my thumb can touch my forearm in like a gross way.
Yeah, I cannot. I couldn't do it without breaking my thumb.
Yeah, probably, and like being double jointed, stuff like that. So it's like, it's a cool party trick, I guess. But in the end, it'll get you. Like it got me.
Sure.
It was fine when I was a dancer. I was a dancer for like 12 years, so it was cool then, but
interesting.
Useless now.
So you're walking the campus of the University of Arkansas. You ultimately decided, and you had the foundation. I mean, you got a minor in Spanish. You had a minor in biology, which not many people do, and you decided to do it. So that probably helped you along the way. And then you hit this point where you were able to have this kind of outer body experience, if you will, in your body, where you got to experience what a lot of your current patients feel like when they come to see you.
Yeah.
And so does that give you a level of humility and a level of understanding that maybe some chiropractors don't have?
I think it does, especially when I was in school, because, when you're like learning, you're like practicing on each other. Like, let's face the facts. I mean, were we practicing at home? No, I would never do that. But, when you're like being supervised at school by your professors or whatever, and we're like learning how to do like adjustments and like even just palpation, which is just like feeling around to find landmarks anatomically and stuff. Some of these people were really like drilling into you. And I'm like, hello, like you cannot use your full body force through your hand to like feel for things. You can't do that. And a lot of these people, we're all like young 20-somethings people. And I'm like, if you've never been in any sort of chronic pain in your life, you have no idea. Like you're going to really hurt somebody like more than they already are. And my patients tell me a lot. They're like, wow, you like adjust so gently and you're so like soft and nice and all this. And I'm like, I mean, what other way is there to do it? And they're like, oh, I've been to other places and they're just like jerking me around and like doing this and doing that. And I'm like, couldn't be me.
What's the fascination though? Because like I've seen those TikTok videos of those, and it's just like, and it almost feels like they have an amplified track, right? Of the cracks and everything. And it's like, it's almost like ASMR for chiropractic.
That's dope. It's definitely like some Hollywood magic is going on for sure. And they definitely like mic up the people. And like they're being a little dramatic. Like they're like, like I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, the cracks sound insane sometimes. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I can't watch it. I do admit that I'm a big fan of Dr. Pimple Popper.
Oh, yeah.
So I watched that show.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross, but I also feel like that's like a needed ability. And certainly I love her bedside manner. She's with so all nice. Of her. Yeah, she really is nice. And I mean, there's something to be said for that, for something that, when you look at the lives of the people that, you think, and I would imagine the same would be for back pain, that so many people not necessarily go undiagnosed, but they go untreated.
Oh yeah. Like a lot of the thing that I see a lot of the time is where someone will come in and they'll be like, oh yeah, I've been experiencing this low back pain forever. I told my primary care doctor about it. And
18 years ago.
Yeah, right. And it's like, I used to be a football player. You know, I'm in my 50s now. I've just been dealing with it forever. Whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I told my doctor about it and they were like, okay, here's this anti-inflammatory, here's this steroid, pain relief, whatever. Yeah. That's not really treating the problem. That's really just putting a Band-Aid over the issue. Whereas chiropractic, like think about your life like a tree. We get to the root cause.
Sure.
If the plant is infected at the root, it's just going to keep spreading and get worse and worse and worse. But if you go to the root of the issue and like address it there, that kind of knocks it out. You're not just like putting a Band-Aid over it or just like, we're just going to treat the symptoms. No, I'm treating the actual cause, not just like the actual manifestation of what you see.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to give a quick shout out, and I will say that this was before you moved to town, but a good friend of mine is a chiropractor. His name is Dr. Ben Ozan.
Mm-hmm.
I've had him on my podcast, and Dr. Ben's amazing. I had some back issues, and he took me through a very, both my wife and he took us both through a place where he got us to truly be free of back pain. Like you said, he got to the root of the problem and slowly unwound that issue. And it wasn't like an instant, he cracked my back and I was straight.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I was healed forever.
I'm on those balancing tables. I'm doing all kinds of stuff that over time made a huge difference. And so there's something to be said for that, right?
Most def. Healing is definitely not linear. Like when I have patients for sure, like, they get up and they're like, oh my gosh, like I haven't felt this good in so long. I'm like, yeah, like that's great, but this is still step one. We can't just like only go one time and just think, oh my gosh, like we're going to be healed forever. No. Not because a lot of reasons. One, because your muscles have to reacclimate to being where they're supposed to be.
Sure.
Your joints have to reacclimate to where they're supposed to be. And it's kind of like when you go to the orthodontist and you get braces, you don't wear braces for one day and then just think everything's going to be fine. You have to wear the braces and then you have to wear the retainer. And then, that's kind of how your teeth stay straight. It's the same thing. Your teeth are shockingly bones. And so, it's the same concept. It's just in your spine. Yeah. So there's also this other myth where like, once you go to the chiropractor, you have to go for the rest of your life.
Yes.
No, you just understand what it feels like to be well and you want to maintain wellness.
Yeah. That was the one thing I was surprised when Ben told me. He's like, hey, man, you don't have to come back here ever again if you don't need to.
Yeah,
I mean,
you don't have to. There's no signing in blood or anything.
Yeah,
like,
I don't need to see you.
I'm not going to put your voice
basis.
in a shell and keep it forever. Like, no.
So
people just like feeling better, I think. And I don't force people to come. Like once they graduate to wellness per se, like if they leave their active complaint and then graduate to wellness, then I'm like, look, it's really up to you. Listen to your body. Like that's part of what I do is teaching people how to listen to their body too. Yeah. It's like, when things are off now because now you know what it's like to be perfectly aligned as you should be and the way you should be moving around. So when you start to feel it, going left a little bit, it's very easy to like catch it right then versus waiting for it to cascade all the way down to level 10.
Absolutely.
And then you're back where you started.
Yeah. And there's even things that people can do on their own that can kind of help, like,
absolutely,
being able to stretch a little bit more often. Being mobile. I know I typically get on a monkey bar and stretch out my arms so that I can kind of decompress my back some.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, but I was just taught that was a good way to kind of alleviate some of the pressure on the vertebrae on your back. So
that's gravity.
Yeah.
It's the use of gravity. It's very simple to do. Like you've probably seen people like in the gym, they call it like dead hangs or something or whatever. They like jump up on there and they just like, you can literally see people's spines like almost like a paper fan when you like pull it open. It's literally that. And really just staying mobile and stretching and things like that helps you stay well. But that's the other thing too. People don't really want to do the work at home. And so that's another reason why some people are like, chiropractic doesn't work. And I'm like, well, you didn't do the things I asked you to do.
So is there a direct correlation for not taking in enough liquids and the challenges that sometimes you have with your back when it comes to that? Because I think people don't understand that either. So staying hydrated also supports a healthy back.
In a number of ways, actually, because one, staying hydrated, helps your body flush out toxins and keeps things moving. So, like when you see like swimmers or like athletes or, football players or something, and they like catch a terrible cramp. Well, you probably weren't being hydrated enough. And then all those things accumulate in your muscles. And that's what cramps are. So if you're drinking enough water, it like flushes out because that's how cells work. And osmosis and stuff. Also, your discs that are between your vertebrae are made of water. So if there's no, if it's like a desert inside your body, then
it's going to be a desert. It's going to
be pretty dry in there,
It is going to be dry, yeah.
So it's like, just drink some water.
Yeah, it does help.
Not tea. I'm not saying like, no, it needs to be water. Water.
H2O. So
because people are like, I drink a lot of tea. No, ma'am, that is not water.
That doesn't count.
Not the same.
Speaking of athletes, you had a chance to work with athletes both in undergrad, and now you're working with athletes again. You work with a number of the U of A athletes.
I do.
What have those conversations been like as you educate them around a healthy back? Because, I mean, clearly they are taking in, whether it's a basketball player or whether it's a football player, in different ways, they are putting some mileage on their back.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they're hanging off of a rim or going to extend for a rebound or
getting tackled,
bracing themselves for a tackle. Exactly. How do you engage them and educate them about this process?
For those guys, the biggest thing is it's two things. One, listening to your body and knowing like when too much is too much. Because a lot of times they're like, oh, well, just one more rep because I'm tough. And I'm like, no, man, I get it. You're 20. You think you can do this for the rest of your life, but also listen to your body. I've seen so many of my guys come in and they're like, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And see, now I'm hobbling around. I'm like, see?
Yeah.
Ugh. Like I even had somebody that he was like, I maxed out on a rep. I knew I shouldn't have done that, like a weight training thing, and tore his pec.
Oh my goodness.
And so his season is over because of, trying to be cool and like showing off and all that. And I'm like, see?
Yeah.
Another big part of it too is mobility, which is like you have to be stretching. You have to be. Like you can be as strong as you want, but if you're not stretching, then what does it matter? Because if your muscles are not used to going beyond that like unnatural limit of, running as fast as you do or getting hit as hard as you do or jumping that high or whatever, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
inevitable.
That's huge because I've actually over-indexed. I know since the pandemic, I stretch in the morning and at night. I got a Peloton. So stretching is a big part of the whole Peloton system. And so I make it a point to stretch in the morning. Sometimes I do a full body. Sometimes I do a lower body. Sometimes I'll do an upper body. But then what I've also found, and this is for anybody listening, I'm telling you, if you just take 10 minutes in the evening to do a little stretch before you go to bed, you will find that you sleep better.
Oh, so soundly.
Yes.
Like even I tell all my patients, I'm like, you don't have to be the world's most flexible person. That's not what I'm saying. But literally even just going on YouTube, which is free.
Yep.
Literally the internet is free.
Yep.
Go to YouTube and I just tell them put in yoga for beginners.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're not putting our feet behind our head. We're not like getting in these weird pretzel positions. Like it's literally just basic stuff. And then you're doing it at home. So there's not like an audience. There's no like people like judging you or whatever. Like literally just do your best. And it's like a 10 or 15 minute thing. And you would just be so surprised. The people that are compliant and do what I ask them to do, they're like, oh my gosh, like, wow, like that really does help. And I'm like, wow, I'm not just like talking to talk. Like, cool. Like, I'm glad you heard me. And I have a couple of my athletes that have taken that seriously too. And they actually go to like Hot Works together now.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, wow, like this is honestly like really something. Like I can really run really far. And my back doesn't lock up when I'm, doing 40-yard dashes or, like running for a punt return or something. And I'm like, neat.
Makes a big difference. So are you a fan or would you recommend like hot yoga to anybody that can stand it?
I would. The hot part really just help get your muscles warm and that whole thing. I mean, it's not America's most comfortable thing, I would say.
Right.
I don't like being hot. So I'm like, don't like it.
It's just something about it though. Every time I've walked out of a hot yoga, whether I've done it at Trailside or a few other places, shout out to Yoga Elixir Lounge.
Yes.
Dr. Calhoun. Yes. Dr. Calhoun's doing some amazing things, but I got to tell you, I just feel different.
Yeah.
And especially if you do it like in the wintertime and you walk outside and you feel that cold air, it just hits you differently. Like, it just feels good.
I'm so agile.
Yeah. It just feels good. So, but I mean, I want that for anyone listening to this. I mean, I think you should feel good. Your body should feel good. And of course, as we age, and I'm no spring chicken, but I'm telling you, you almost have to over-index in some of these areas to ensure that, your body doesn't become brittle. I was watching a special about the blue zones. And are you familiar with the blue zones at all?
A little bit. I don't know too much about it.
So it's on a guy named Dan Buettner wrote a book about blue zones, and it's about some of the places where people live the longest.
Oh, okay.
One of those is Okinawa. And they did I saw the 35-minute episode on Okinawa. And they were just talking about, just the multi-generational living, the healthy diet and all that. But then the other thing that they said was that, Okinawans don't typically use a lot of furniture in their house. They sit down on the ground. And the point that he made was simply this. When you have an 80-year-old that is sitting on the ground and gets up like 30 or 40 times in a day, that's like doing 30 or 40 squats for a person that's 80 plus years of age.
And imagine like holding stuff in your hands.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there's something to be said for maybe from time to time when you're in your family room, sitting down on the ground, when you watch a movie, maybe foregoing sitting on the couch and just, getting a little grounded, if you will, no pun intended. And, feeling that and then just, using whatever you need to use to get up, and you'll find that over time it becomes a lot easier.
Absolutely. And there's even a lot of research similar to that where people are now doing their workouts barefoot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've done that for a
My
long
husband
time.
does that. He's a trainer.
Yeah.
And, doing that forces the intrinsic muscles of your feet to work harder, which actually makes the whole workout harder.
Yeah.
Because you can't rely on like an arch of a shoe or whatever to like hold you up. And it also does just really just strengthen your whole body more adequately.
I do it a little bit every now and then in my neighborhood. I just got to watch out for glass and poop. But other than that, everything else is good.
We have a home gym, so we just do it in the garage.
But when
I'm not walking around barefoot outside.
No. I understand.
I'm not doing that. You could.
There was a guy, I read about a guy in somewhere in New York City, maybe in Queens. Or no, he's in Connecticut. But he has, for the longest time, he has not worn shoes anywhere. And the only time he puts shoes on is when he's required to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but his feet are very healthy. Of course, they're highly calloused and all that, but they're strong.
Oh, yeah.
And it just makes for a much stronger foundation.
It does. And then I had a lot of friends like in chiropractic school and stuff that now to this day, they still like when they're at work, they don't wear shoes and they, they wear like a sock or something maybe if it's cold. Yeah. But there's like, it's just easier to control what you're doing better. I'm a Croc girl. I'm in a Croc. A wide toe box. I live for it. I don't care that they're ugly. I don't think they're ugly, actually. They're very comfortable. So who cares? Like a Birkenstock, a Croc.
Yeah.
Something where your feet can actually expand the way they're intended to.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool. Well, listen, I don't want to, you've been so kind with your time and I really appreciate you giving us an opportunity to be able to tell your story on our platform. I want to ask you a favor for our listeners. Would you be willing to just give a simple recommendation of some resources that individuals, the listeners of the podcast can reach out for if they want to gain some more insight and understanding above and beyond just your website, maybe something that they should look at for some, just a better idea about how they can, give some love back to their back and to their body in general, as far as that's concerned. Would you be able to provide us with a few resources that might be helpful? And you don't have to rattle them off here. You can just shoot me an email with a couple of links and we'll include that along with a link to your website. Because I'm assuming you're open for taking new clients or
I am.
Okay, that's good
Every
to know.
Day. I do
Every
same day appointments.
There
Book online. Please don't call my office.
The whole night. And the website is essence-chiropractic.com.
It is.
Okay, perfect.
You can also hit me up on Instagram, Facebook. I've had patients do that. People will be like, hey, like they'll just like slide in the DMs and they're like, hey, can I please
what's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram is Dr. Bri Chiro. So it's just DrBriChiro.
Perfect. There you go. And we'll put all of that in the show notes so that you guys can reach out to Dr. Bri and gain some additional insight. If this was helpful for you, please let her know that you heard about her first here on the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. And I certainly would encourage you to support her business and all that she's doing to create awareness around a healthy body and more importantly, a healthy back and just the holistic nature of it. It's not, we shouldn't have to go through our lives, with pill boxes littered around our nightstand. We should be able to live a healthy life and not living off of pills. And I get it. Some people have that dependency, but certainly we want to encourage you to find alternative ways to find your healing.
Oh yeah. There's more than one way to do it. Like just because the traditional Western medicine model, it might work for some people. It did not work for me, but I'm not saying it's a wrong answer. It's just a different one.
Right.
I just like to give people resources and be like, have you considered this option? I'm not saying you have to do it, but here's what you could do. You could try it.
Right.
I always like to say, because chiropractic is very conservative care. So it's like, let's try the baby step first before we do something we can't come back from, like a surgery. You can't really undo that.
Yeah.
If chiropractic doesn't work for you, you don't like it, that's fine. I can refer you somewhere else. I have no problem referring you to the next step. Like, I want you to get better ultimately.
Yeah.
But why not try something low risk before we do something extremely high risk?
Sure.
Let's be real. If surgery, you might not wake up for real.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I have to ask, did you ever go back to that doctor that had suggested that you get surgery to say, see, look at me, like do a handspring in front of him?
I was like, you know what? You got it, dog. Like, I'm going to let you keep, doing you. I'm sure you're turning lives somewhere.
Right.
I'm glad that's working for you. But at the crisp age of 19, it was not hitting for me.
And maybe somebody that's listening to this is at a young age and facing something like that. And I'm always suggesting that you get advice from the experts. I'm not dispensing any medical advice whatsoever on this podcast. This is purely entertainment and information, but certainly you need to talk with your general practitioner, whoever your doctor is, and talk to a chiropractor because they're doctors too. And
it's just a different school of thought. It's not wrong. It's just different.
Yep.
So I just like to educate people every way I can because I'm like, well, have you considered option 2?
Right.
And they're like, what do you mean? I've only ever heard of option 1. And I'm like, well, here you go. Like, I'm not going to make the decision for you, but I love giving resources and this and that and websites and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, I also do have a doctorate. This is not made up.
Right. Exactly.
This is real science. Yep. I am a primary care physician. Just saying. I'm also a portal of entry doctor, meaning like I can write you a referral somewhere else.
Sure.
If you need it.
Yeah.
So I'm not really seeing the cons of not trying it.
Exactly.
And a lot of my athletes that I've, like my NIL guys, had never been adjusted before, ever. And they're like, I don't have a reason to do this. I'm like,
until they happen. Now they're coming back.
It's now they're hitting me up like they get paid to do it or something.
Exactly.
And I'm like, geez Louise, you guys. Like, and they're like, oh, Dr. Bri, do you have time this week? I'm like, man, I just saw you. But yeah, I do. That's good.
Well, certainly the likelihood of us winning an SEC championship may rest in your hands.
I mean,
no pun intended.
They did say I am the best chiropractor in the SEC. I don't know what metric they have for that. I didn't ask. I was like, you know what? I'll take that one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm like one of the only chiropractors that is doing NIL deals. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be sure to make sure that all of the listeners know how to reach Dr. Bri. And like I said, if you ever want, I've been to chiropractors before on multiple occasions. One because of an accident, and then the other time was just because my back needed just getting older, lifestyle, right? And so, but it was the best thing ever, and I didn't have to keep going. I got corrected, I got right, and I'm doing what I need to do on a daily basis.
But you're following instructions.
Right, I am following instructions, which, if you don't, that's just more job security.
I'm like, don't do it, please. What?
No, seriously, though, it's not as hard as you think. But Dr. Bri, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
So, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, folks, there you have it. Another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Remember, you can find our podcast everywhere great podcasts can be found. I'd love it if you'd give us a rating, a review. Let us know what you think about the podcast. You can review us right on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. Let us know how great the podcast is and share it with a friend because sharing is caring. Remember, our episodes come out every Monday, rain or shine, and I would love to see you next week for another new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you back here soon. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.